Hey guys, we're going to do something a little bit different today. I thought we'd have maybe a little bit more of a discussion. I'm really curious about what those of you who play around a little bit more with games like Action PC Football think about this topic. The thing I'm thinking about is sort of cross-era play and exactly how that works. So I'm not really necessarily an expert on football and on how cross-era play like theoretically could be possible. I know a lot about baseball and a lot about the problems that you run into with baseball. Of course, baseball is a lot different. In baseball, you have a sport where the rules and strategies, for the most part, have been largely unchanged over a century, right? Whereas in football, you have a sport where the rules and the basic ideas, especially on offense, have changed quite a bit. I mean, if we were going to go back and watch a college football game from like 1924, you might see the occasional forward pass, but it's going to be largely on the ground, whereas today you're going to see a game that combines a lot of elements of West Coast offense passing and that sort of thing, and sort of a real spread out offense with older elements of running to try to, get the other team off balance a little bit. I mean, that's perfectly fine when it comes to an individual season, whether it's college or pro football. You can figure out ways to make sure that you're calling the right types of plays and that you don't have anything sort of like weird or funky going on, that you can make sure that the game is being coached the way that you want it to be coached, right? A lot of games offer the ability to stop the computer from making certain types of play calls, for example, and stuff like that. But where it becomes tricky is when you're talking about taking, say, a team from one era and combining it with a team from another era. I was thinking about that just the other day when I was taking a gander over here on the Action PC Football website. You can see they have college football's top 101 teams, first two different sets, 1940 to 1970, then 71 to 99. I'm guessing that these add up together to be 101 teams. I don't know. I don't have a copy of this. At least I don't think so. I probably should have checked beforehand. If you do want to let me know, just write below and let me know what you think. And especially if you played with this and if you tried it, let me know what happens when you try it out, because I have some real questions. I mean, the first thing is that if we look at a team like, I don't know, Notre Dame in 1966, the statistics that we have for this team are pretty sparse. I'm mostly interested in looking not at the offense, but at the defensive players and just looking at like how big they are, right? So one of the problems that you're going to run into here if you watch football from any of these earlier eras is that the size of players has changed dramatically over time, right? And this is apparent. I mean, if you watch an NFL game from the 1980s, this is apparent, where you look at the guys that the commentators would say are really big guys on the offensive line, and you're thinking 260 or something like that. You're thinking today you wouldn't make the squad. I mean, this is part of the problem, right? In baseball, you can have a player who's taller, a player who's short, but for the most part, there's going to be a place for the guy to play, right? In basketball, it's going to be a little bit trickier if you're short, unless you're Spud Webb, Muggsy Bogues, that type of player. You're going to have a lot of exceptional talent to make up for the fact that you're like 5'6", right? But in football is where I think you see the biggest problem, because if you're really undersized, if you don't have the bulk and if you don't have the strength, and especially for like positions like tight end, if you're just not tall enough, I mean, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to work, right? So we look forward. I mean, 66 would be here in this first collection of teams, right? Let's look here at this second one. And I thought, well, let's look at another national championship team. So Pitt in 1976, right? At least here we do have like some defensive players and stats we can look at. So I took a look at the first one, Bob Jury. Now, I'm not like an expert at all, like I said, on football. This is his pro football page. This was his college page, and then pro. He played over for San Francisco in 1978, had one season. But the thing I'm interested in is not that. What I'm interested in is how big was he. And Bob Jury was 6'1", 188, which makes him a little bit taller than me, probably about, 3 inches taller than me. So, a bit taller, and probably about, 15, 20 pounds heavier than I am. So I have sort of an idea of like how big this guy was, right? And then I thought, well, just for the heck of it, we'll go look at this year's Washington Huskies, and I'll just pick out the first defensive player I can find. So Dominique Hampton, who also happens to be a defensive back, and he's 6'2", so about the same height, but 220. Right. You can see right here, I mean, we're not even talking about linemen. We're talking about sort of, linebackers there on defense. That's a major difference. I mean, going from like about 185 up to 220, and we're talking probably 220 of like raw muscle, right, is a big difference, right? The reason why I bring this up is because every single time you go onto like a baseball message board or onto baseball Twitter or Reddit or something like that, people start saying, oh, the players today are obviously better than the players of the past because we have like, the old thing is we have faster track runners and faster swimmers and stuff. So it must be that everything today is better than it was in the past. In baseball, I think that there's a really good counter argument that can be made, especially since raw speed is not quite good enough to succeed in the sport. But in football, it's a little bit different. This is a sport where I do think that raw speed would make a big difference, and where I think that the difference that modern medicine and modern training creates is so big and so apparent that these cross era comparisons are very difficult, and it would be very difficult to take a team from a past era and put them into the present game. Similarly, if you were going to take a team like Washington this year and put them back into, I don't know, like 1950, you would have a really hard time doing that. Even if you said, fine, I'm going to run this team only with 1950 offense, I mean, you'd have to restrict the number of players that are on the team to meet up with what the rules were at the time. I can't remember if 1950 is a unlimited substitution or not, but if it's a limited substitution era, you have to make sure that you don't take anyone out of the lineup like you normally would, right? Because you can't. You'd have to make sure that you're running only the standard types of offenses and defenses that were available at the time. And even then, you have to deal with the fact that you've got players who are simply larger than the other players, right? There's got to be some sort of way to balance that. So that's sort of the thing I'm trying to work my head around. Like I said, if any of you have experience doing this type of league, or if you've looked into this, I'm sure some of you have, sort of let me know what you think. I'm really interested in kind of understanding how this would work and whether such a thing is even feasible. I mean, I might be overthinking it, but the more I think about it, the more I think, it's just such a crazy comparison. I don't really see any way that it would work. I'd love to be proven wrong, though. So anyway, there you have it for today. I'll talk with you tomorrow. Bye.